The moment she locked the door, I realized 7 years of friendship were about to change in 7 minutes. I could hear the laughter from the living room fading behind us as my best friend, Emma, turned the little brass lock and slipped the key into her pocket. She looked at me with an expression I had never seen before, nervous, determined, and strangely hopeful. Then she leaned against the door, took a shaky breath, and told me to start the clock. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the courage it takes to tell someone how you really feel, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear a story like this, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Sometimes the person standing closest to our heart is the one we're most afraid to lose. I had known Emma since college. We met on a rainy afternoon when everyone else had already rushed into the library, leaving me standing outside with a broken umbrella and a stack of books pressed against my chest. Emma had appeared beside me, laughed at my terrible attempt to stay dry, and held her umbrella over both of us. That small act became the beginning of everything. For 7 years, she was the person I called when life went wrong. She knew when I was pretending to be okay. She knew I hated crowded restaurants, loved old movies, and still kept the birthday card my mother had given me before she passed away. She knew every embarrassing story about me, every failed relationship, every dream I was too afraid to chase. And I knew hers. Or at least I thought I did. That night, we were at a friend's apartment for a birthday party. Someone suggested playing 7 Minutes in Heaven, the silly game everyone pretended was childish while secretly hoping their name would be called. I laughed when the bottle spun around the circle. I never expected it to stop pointing at Emma. Everyone erupted. Emma looked at me. I looked at her. There was a moment when neither of us moved. Then she stood up, walked across the room, took my hand, and pulled me toward the hallway. I thought she was joking. She wasn't. The little storage room was barely large enough for 2 people. There were boxes against one wall, coats hanging from hooks, and a faint smell of cedar. Emma closed the door behind us. Then she locked it. My heart began pounding. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. The timer was already open. 7 minutes. She looked at me and told me to start the clock. I pressed the button. 7 minutes had never sounded so long. At first, neither of us spoke. We simply stood there, surrounded by darkness and the muffled sounds of our friends laughing outside. I tried to make a joke, but Emma shook her head. She wasn't interested in jokes. She told me that she had been trying to tell me something for almost 2 years. My stomach tightened. I thought about all the possibilities. Maybe she was moving away. Maybe she had met someone. Maybe she was sick. Maybe she was about to tell me that our friendship had become too complicated. Then she admitted the truth. She had fallen in love with me. I felt as if the room had suddenly become smaller. The words I had secretly dreamed of hearing for years were finally standing between us, and instead of feeling victorious, I felt terrified. Because I loved Emma too. I just had never allowed myself to say it. After my mother died, I had built walls around myself. I convinced myself that losing people was inevitable, so the safest thing was never to need anyone too much. Emma had spent years quietly climbing over those walls without forcing her way through them. She brought soup when I was sick. She sat beside me when I couldn't sleep. She remembered my mother's birthday even when I tried to forget it. When my last relationship ended badly, Emma didn't tell me to move on. She simply sat beside me on the kitchen floor while I cried and stayed until morning. Somewhere along the way, friendship had become something deeper. But I had been afraid to name it. Emma told me she had tried to move on. She had gone on dates. She had met people who were kind, funny, attractive, and completely wrong for her. Because every time someone asked her what she wanted in a relationship, she thought of me. Then she said something that broke my heart. She said she wasn't locking that door because she expected me to kiss her. She was locking it because she needed 7 minutes where she could finally be honest without running away. The timer showed 5 minutes remaining. I stared at her. She looked down at the floor and admitted that she was afraid of losing me. If I didn't feel the same way, she promised she would accept it. She would give me space. She would even learn how to be my friend again. But she couldn't keep pretending that her feelings didn't exist. I reached for her hand. She looked up. I told her the truth. I had loved her for longer than I could remember. Her eyes filled with tears. She asked why I had never said anything. I didn't have a good answer. I told her I was afraid that one wrong word could destroy the best friendship I had ever had. I was afraid that if I told her how much she meant to me and she didn't feel the same, I would lose her. And if she did feel the same, I was terrified that love would eventually take her away too. Emma squeezed my hand. Then she reminded me of something I had forgotten. Love wasn't a guarantee that someone would stay forever. It was a reason to stop wasting the time we were given. The timer showed 3 minutes. We sat on the floor. For the first time, there was no pretending between us. No jokes. No carefully chosen words. No hiding behind friendship. We talked about everything we had been too afraid to say. She told me about the first time she realized she loved me. It was not some grand romantic moment. It was the night I had driven across town at 2 in the morning because she had called me crying after losing her job. I hadn't tried to fix anything. I had simply shown up. She said that was when she understood that home wasn't always a place. Sometimes it was a person who showed up. I told her that I realized I loved her months later, when my mother died and Emma was the only person who didn't tell me to be strong. She let me be broken. She let me grieve. And somehow, that made me stronger. The timer showed 1 minute. Emma smiled through her tears. She said that maybe 7 minutes weren't enough to decide the rest of our lives. I told her they didn't have to be. When the timer finally rang, neither of us moved toward the door. We simply stayed there, holding hands. Outside, everyone was shouting for us to come out. But inside that tiny room, something had changed. Not because we had kissed. Not because of the game. Because for 7 minutes, two people who had spent years protecting their friendship finally stopped protecting themselves from love. When we eventually opened the door, our friends immediately began teasing us. Emma laughed, and I laughed too. But then I looked at her. She looked at me. And we both knew that whatever happened next, we couldn't go back to pretending nothing had happened. The next morning, I woke up to a message from her asking if I remembered what happened. I told her I remembered every second. She asked if I regretted it. I told her no. Then I asked if she wanted breakfast. She replied that she did. That breakfast lasted 4 hours. We talked about our fears. Our hopes. Our families. Our pasts. The possibility that maybe we had spent years calling something friendship because it was less frightening than calling it love. We didn't rush. We didn't make promises we couldn't keep. We simply decided to give ourselves a chance. Months passed. Our relationship wasn't perfect. Sometimes we argued. Sometimes we misunderstood each other. Sometimes the transition from best friends to something more felt awkward and unfamiliar. But we kept choosing honesty. And that became the greatest lesson of my life. I had spent years believing that protecting myself from heartbreak was the same thing as protecting my heart. It wasn't. Sometimes protecting your heart means having the courage to open it. A year after that night, Emma and I returned to the same apartment for another friend's birthday. Someone found the old timer in a drawer and joked about playing the game again. Everyone laughed. Emma looked at me. I smiled. She took my hand. We didn't need 7 minutes anymore. We had learned that love wasn't about how much could happen in 7 minutes. It was about what you were brave enough to say when you finally stopped counting the seconds. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who needs a second chance, and subscribe for more stories about kindness, courage, friendship, and love. Sometimes one honest moment can change an entire life. And before you go, comment, "I choose courage," if you believe that some of the most beautiful relationships begin when two people finally stop being afraid of what their hearts are trying to say. Because sometimes, the door we are most afraid to open isn't a door at all. It's our heart. And sometimes, all it takes is 7 minutes of courage to discover that the person you've been searching for has been standing beside you all along.